covered in mud. Alistair, it is you, isn't it?
There's just something I love so much about covered in mud. Alistair! Must be him! It really kind of sets a picture of Alistair's childhood. We are back playing Dragon Age Origins today, but before we get going, before we leave Lothering, let's check the Codex. Adventures of the Black Fox. Born Lord Remy Vascal in 863 Blessed, the Black Fox was a dashing thief and a rogue who went on to inspire so many tales of his exploits that it is nearly impossible to determine today which are true and which are merely fabricated legend. Despite coming from nobility, he has become something of a hero of the common people. His initial exploits involved ridiculing the tyrannical and powerful lord of Valcheven. Wearing a mask, he would appear in public and disrupt the lord's plans to the point that the lord angrily put a huge bounty on the life of this cunning fox, the origin of the nickname which stuck. That the primary bounty hunter who took the job, Carlois, ended up becoming Remy's lifelong partner in crime, only after nearly killing him several times, is one of the most popular tales told in taverns today. The story is often exaggerated to make Remy appear initially buffoonish, until Carlois becomes so furious at the Black Fox's inexplicable ability to survive that the cunning Remy gains the upper hand, which impresses Carlois so much that the bounty hunter joins him. After years of terrorizing the Lord's men and foiling his tax collectors, a favorite pastime of Remy's according to the Orlesian commoners, Remy was supposedly betrayed by his lover, Servana de Montfort, in some versions of the tale, a mage of the circle no less, and captured. After more than a year of torture, Remy was rescued from prison by his compatriots, including a repentant Servana, and together they escaped Orlais. In this period of Remy's adventures, he appears almost everywhere in Thedas. As his legend grew, more innkeepers and merchants were happy to claim that the Black Fox had visited their village or establishment and performed some legendary feat. If the tales are to be believed, Remy led the Lord's men on a merry chase. He became embroiled in political intrigue in Navarra, was hunted by the crows of Antiva, and then kidnapped by a powerful mage in Tevinter. In each situation, Remy escaped death at the last moment, foiled the evildoer, and improved life for the poor and downtrodden. Then, inevitably, he rejoined his band of adventurers and moved on to the next land. His companions, Carlois and Servana, the wise dwarf Bolek, and the tempestuous knight Sir Clementus, have each spawned their own individual legends over the years. The stories all agree that, at some point, the Black Fox disappeared. He and his fellow adventurers voyaged into the heart of the Arlathan forest, seeking the sunken city of the elves, and never returned. Many more are the tales that expand on what ultimately happened to them in the forest, and postulate on how they could someday be rescued. From The Adventures of the Black Fox, by Gaston Garol, 911 Dragon. Arl Eamon Garin. Nobility does not exist without obligation. We owe all we have, even our lives, to our land and our people. As the maternal uncle of King Cailan, Arl Eamon is one of the king's most trusted advisors. Redcliffe, while not a large or especially wealthy part of Ferelden, is a critical strategic location. The fortress guards the western pass that leads to Orlais, as well as the major trade route with Orzammar. A well-respected man, though not the most charismatic, King Cailan once said of him, "My uncle Eamon is a man everyone thinks well of, when they remember to think of him at all. He fell ill with a mysterious condition that even magic could not treat." Flemeth. You are required to do nothing, least of all, believe. Ages ago, legend says Ban Conabar took to wife a beautiful young woman who harbored a secret talent for magic, Flemeth of Highever, and for a time they lived happily, until the arrival of a young poet, Osen, who captured the lady's heart with his verse. They turned to the chastened tribes for help, and hid from Conabar's wrath in the wilds, until word came to them that Conabar lay dying. His last wish was to see Flemeth's face one final time. The lovers returned, but it was a trap. Conabar killed Osen and imprisoned Flemeth in the highest tower of the castle. In grief and rage, Flemeth worked a spell to summon a spirit into this world to wreak vengeance upon her husband. Vengeance she received, but not as she planned. The spirit took possession of her, turning Flemeth into an abomination. A twisted, maddened creature, she slaughtered Conabar and all his men and fled back into the wilds. For 100 years, Flemeth plotted, stealing men from the Chasyn to sire monstrous daughters, horrific things that could kill a man with fear. These Korkari witches led an army of Chasyn from the wilds to strike at the Alamari tribes. They were defeated by the hero Cormac, and all the witches burned, so they say. But even now, the Wilders whisper that Flemeth lives on in the marsh, and she and her daughters steal those men who come too near. Morrigan's mother saved the last Grey Wardens from death at the top of the Tower of Ishal, but just who or what Flemeth truly is a mystery. Let's throw in another one here. I don't want to get too far behind with these Codex entries. I'm hoping that we can mostly keep up with them as we play. Arl Rendon Howe. It will be good to ride into battle once more, won't it, old friend? The Arling of Amaranthin winds along the sinuous northeastern coast of Ferelden. The waking sea is known for its temper, and the storms that sweep in from the warmer northern waters are sudden and brutal. These are the lands of Rendon Howe. He was born during the occupation, and like many of the nobles at the time, joined Prince Merrick's rebels. He fought alongside young Bryce Cousland, future Terran of Highever, and Leonis Bryland, future Arl of South Reach, at the bloody Battle of White River. It was the most catastrophic defeat of the entire occupation, from which only 50 rebel soldiers escaped alive. Although he was decorated for valor by King Merrick, Howe's abrasive manners have earned him almost universal dislike among his peers. When Bryce sent his men to support the king at Ostagar, Howe took it as an opportunity to attack Highever, slaughtering the people there and claiming the lands and title as his own. Of all the inhabitants of Castle Cousland, only Elissa survived. Well, technically we don't quite know that. Fergus could still be out there somewhere. But if it is, it's so unlikely that we will find him that at this point we may as well proceed as if he isn't. But he might be. All right. Time to leave and venture forth into the world. We're stopping at camp first. Okay.
Bad dreams, huh?
It seems so real.
Well, it is real. Sort of. You see, part of being a Grey Warden is being able to hear the Darkspawn. That's what your dream was, hearing them. The Archdemon, it talks to the Horde, and we feel it just as they do. That's why we know this is really a blight.
Why didn't Duncan just tell everyone that?
He did. He said he felt the Archdemon's presence. Everyone just assumed he was guessing. It takes a bit, but eventually you can block the dreams out. Some of the older Grey Wardens say they can understand the Archdemon a bit, but I sure can't. Anyhow, when I heard you thrashing around, I thought I should tell you. It was scary at first for me, too.
Any other surprises I should know about?
Other than dying young and the whole defeat the Blight alone thing, no. I'm all tapped out for surprises. Anyhow, you're up now, right? Let's pull up camp and get a move on.
Okay, since we've been forced back into camp, this is an opportunity to talk to everybody. So, we're going to spend quite a bit of today in dialogue, I think, with all of our campmates.
Oh, why, you little...
are you harassing my dog?
Me? Harassing your dog? I should say it's the other way round. Your furry friend here took offense at me getting near his food. He snapped at me, look.
There's hardly any blood drawn. Still, he shouldn't have.
Sometimes I forget that he's a war dog. That'll teach me. I once heard a really old legend about how the hound warriors in the days of the old tribes would feed their Mabari the flesh of the vanquished. Well, that's what I heard anyway. It would sometimes be human flesh. Oh, like you can tell the difference. For all you know, maybe you've already been fed something. Someone.
Don't listen to Alistair. He's full of rubbish.
Hey!
Look at what your fool dog placed in my pack. A putrid, half-eaten hare is not something a woman wants to find in her unmentionables.
It's the thought that counts. He means well.
The dirty mongrel can have this back. There. And tell him not to do it again.
It's a gift. You can't just throw it away like that.
I just did. I don't want it, you worthless fur bag.
I think you hurt his feelings.
Oh, he's just trying to be manipulative, I can tell. I do it too.
Cruel. That was a gift. That was a gift for the family. I'll just keep watching for now.
You are a true warrior and worthy of respect.
Interesting. Trying to find a way through the earth, are we? It's going to take some time, you know. Well, good luck with that, then. Oh, and we can pet him. Like a boy. Let's speak to Sten next.
Why are we stopping?
I think we should talk for a moment.
There are darkspawn to be fought. Is this delay needful?
I need to know if I can trust you at my back.
I am Kunari. I have given my word to aid you. We are not people of idle promises.
I've never seen a Kunari before. Tell me about your people.
No.
No? Why not?
People are not simple. They cannot be summarized for easy reference in the manner of... The elves are a lithe, pointy-eared people who excel at poverty.
Little hostile, aren't we?
Many humans have said that to me. I do not understand it. If I were indeed hostile, you would be bleeding.
So this is you being calm and helpful.
Couldn't you tell?
You said you were in the army.
I am.
Have you ever fought in a war?
I have always fought in war, human.
What do you mean by that?
My people have been at war since the moment we set foot in the Northern Islands.
So the Kunari don't come from the islands?
We do now.
Where did you come from before?
Somewhere else.
Can you be more specific?
No. I was born in Seheron. Of the land we came from, I know nothing, not even its name. I do not see how this matters. Seheron and Parvolan are distant. Ferelden and the Darkspawn are immediate.
Are you all right? You were in that cage for weeks.
You are concerned. No need. I am fit enough to fight.
Why did you offer to help me?
For the moment, you are the enemy of my enemy.
For the moment.
Yes, I am Kunari. As long as you do not make yourself my enemy, I will aid you. I can promise nothing else.
We should get moving.
As you wish.
Leliana next, I think.
Yes?
I'd like to talk.
Well, here I am.
What was life like in the Chantry Cloister?
Quiet. It was a life suited for contemplation. In the cloister, away from the fuss and the flurry of the cities, I found peace. And in that stillness, I could hear the Maker. But it was not perfect. Some of my Chantry fellows were condescending. That is the nature of religious folk, I suppose.
Condescending? How so?
When I talked about my beliefs, that the Maker reveals himself in the beauty of his world, they treated me with disdain. They want to believe that he's gone, so that when he turns his gaze on them, it means they are special, chosen. He cannot possibly have love for all, the sick and the weary, the beggars and the fools.
What did you say to them?
What can I say to them? What they believe is what the Chantry says, and the Chantry is infallible, yes? Maybe I am wrong. But it is the Maker's place to decide if I am worthy, not men, not the Chantry. But there is work to be done, and I have talked enough for now. Yes?
Yeah, I'd like to talk.
Well, here I am.
What would someone like you be doing in Lothering's Chantry?
What is meant by someone like me?
They don't teach you how to fight in the cloister, do they?
Did you think I was always a cloistered sister? The Chantry provides succor and safe harbor to all who seek it. I chose to stay and become affirmed.
Affirmed.
We affirm our belief in the Maker, in Andraste and the Chant, but other than that, there are no vows taken.
And why were you seeking safe harbor?
The Chantry does not pride, and you should. I desired time apart from the world. I was a traveling minstrel in Orlais. Tales and songs were my life. I performed, and they rewarded me with applause and coin. And my skill in battle? Well, you pick up different skills when you travel, yes? Yes, of course. Let's move on.
Yeah, that's not suspicious at all, Leliana.
Yes?
This vision of yours.
I knew this would come up sooner or later. I don't know how to explain, but I had a dream. In it, there was an impenetrable darkness. It was so dense, so real. And there was a noise, a terrible, ungodly noise. I stood on a peak and watched as the darkness consumed everything. And when the storm swallowed the last of the sun's light, I fell, and the darkness drew me in.
What then?
When I woke, I went to the Chantry's gardens, as I always do. But that day, the rosebush in the corner had flowered. Everyone knew that bush was dead. It was grey and twisted and gnarled, the ugliest thing you ever saw. But there it was, a single beautiful rose. It was as though the Maker stretched out his hand to say, even in the midst of this darkness, there is hope and beauty. Have faith.
And this made you want to help me?
In my dream, I fell, or maybe I jumped. I'd do anything to stop the Blight. I know that we can do it. There are so many good things in the Maker's world. How can I sit by while the Blight devours everything?
The Chantry says the Maker has left us.
He's still here. I hear him in the wind and the waves. I feel him in the sunlight that warms my skin. I know what the Chantry says about the Maker, and what should I believe? What I feel in my heart, or what others tell me?
Are you saying the Chantry is wrong?
They said my ideas were blasphemy. But is it so bad if what I believe gives me comfort? If it could give someone else comfort? I know what I know, and no one will ever make that untrue.
You were a traveling minstrel. Do you have tales to share?
Of course I do. I love stories far too much to keep them to myself. Everyone should be able to benefit from them, I think.
Tell me about Darkspawn.
Chantry law says it is man's pride that created the Darkspawn. In ages past, the mages of the Tevinder Imperium ruled much of the world we know. In their pride, they thought their magics invincible and imagined that they were greater than the Maker himself. So thinking, they invaded his golden city, planning to take it for themselves and depose their own creator. But they were impure and full of sin, and it is with the sin that they tainted the golden city, corrupting it forever. The Maker cursed them and cast them from his sight. Wherever they went, they spread the taint of their sin. Any land that was touched by the taint became blighted and would suffer no life. Instead, the Darkspawn arose to torment us and remind us of our hubris.
Know any stories from Orlais?
Of course, Orlesians enjoy telling stories. I shall tell you my favorite tale of Aveline, the Knight of Orlais.
Go ahead.
A long time ago, a girl child was born to a farmer. He had hoped for a son, not a daughter, and so he told his wife to abandon the child in the woods. Before the cold could claim her, the baby was found by a tribe of Dalish elves who took pity on the poor mewling thing and raised her as their own. Aveline, for that is what they called her, grew strong and quick and clever under the guidance of the elves. She learned to wield the sword as well as any man, could kill a deer with an arrow at 100 paces, and was as graceful on the back of a horse as she was on foot.
Continue.
Aveline's Dalish guardians saw that she could easily best any Orlesian chevalier in battle, and wanted to show the cruel humans the child they had left to die. They bestowed upon her a fine horse and armor, and sent her to prove herself to her people in the grand tourney. Now in those days, no woman was allowed to take up arms, let alone compete in the grand tourney, but Aveline kept her helmet on and was not discovered.
Did she win the tourney?
Aveline won many events and gained the approval of the adoring crowd. Eventually, she came face to face with the knight Kaleva in the grand melee. Aveline had already bested him in the joust, and Kaleva was determined not to lose a second time. Out of desperation to regain his honor, Kaleva tripped Aveline and tossed her to the ground, ripping off her helmet as he did so. Silence fell upon the arena as Aveline was revealed. Kaleva declared the previous competitions invalid. A woman had taken part, and this was not allowed. But the crowd cheered for Aveline. Kaleva was furious, for he had lost to a woman and was now being shamed. Blinded by his rage, he forced Aveline to her knees. "Know your place, woman," cried he, and slit her throat.
I was hoping for a happy ending.
The son of the king, Prince Freyan, was present. He recognized Aveline's skill and bravery and began to see the injustice done to the women in his land. When he was made king, he rewrote the laws of Orlais so that women could also become chevalier. He honored Aveline and knighted her after her death. And to this day, any female who is knighted reveres Aveline the Brave, for she is the patron of all women chevalier.
Do you know any Ferelden legends?
I know one, told to me by my mother a long time ago. It always chilled me to the bone. Maybe you have heard of Flemeth?
I met a Flemeth in the Kokari Wilds.
Are you sure? Was she the Flemeth of legend? Flemeth, the devourer of men? Flemeth, mother of witches? Flemeth, demon-touched, who dwells in the mists?
She didn't really introduce herself as such.
Ferelden mothers scare their daughters with talk of Flemeth. They say that if you're bad, Flemeth will spirit you away and bind you to her forever. They also say that Flemeth mourns her lost beauty and will steal yours through your looking glass if she catches you.
Tell me the whole story.
Flemeth's beauty was known throughout the land. She had hair like unto a moonless night, skin as pale as winter's first snow, and eyes as beautiful and perilous as the sea. When she came of age, she came to the attention of the Lord of Highever, Conobar, and he took her for his wife. Conobar soon learned that his young bride had the gift of magic. He kept this a secret, for he feared that she would be taken from him. Flemeth stayed with Conobar for some years, and with his blessing, she practiced her art. And then one day, a young poet named Osen came to the castle. Flemeth was captivated by Osen's voice, and he by her beauty, and they fell in love.
Ooh, the plot thickens.
Flemeth longed to be with her true love, and she and Osen fled from Conobar's lands, seeking refuge in the Kokari wilds with the Chassin tribes. They lived there happily for many a year, till the day Flemeth received news that Conobar was dying and longed to see her face one last time. Flemeth's heart swelled with pity for the man who once was her husband, and begged Osen to return to Conobar's side with her. But when Flemeth and Osen entered Highever, they were captured by Conobar's men, and Osen was slain in front of Flemeth's eyes. Flemeth was imprisoned in the highest tower of the castle, there to await Conobar's judgment on her. Distraught at the loss of her love, Flemeth plotted revenge against her husband. She summoned a fey demon, intending for it to wreak vengeance on Conobar. But a spell went awry. The demon possessed Flemeth. Turning her into an abomination, the halls of the castle ran red with blood as Flemeth slaughtered Conobar and all his men. The last of Flemeth's humanity melted away, and at dawn, she stole back to the wilds to plot and scheme for 100 years. They say she took to her side many Chassin men, and with their help, begat her daughter witches, who even now prowl the dark places of the Kokari wilds.
There was another story I wanted to hear.
Which one?
Do you know anything about the Dalish?
I have heard a little about how the elves gained their freedom from the Tevinter Imperium. When Andraste began her exalted march against the Imperium, the elves joined her cause to fight their masters. The great elven leader, Chit-chattin, born in captivity, rose up to lead his people. He foresaw a future where the elves were free. Chit-chattin was killed when Andraste was betrayed, but the elves continued to fight, eventually breaking free of the Imperium. The elves claimed the Dales in the south and settled there in a land of their own.
It didn't last.
The elves lived in the Dales for centuries. They resurrected the worship of the elven gods and would allow the building of no chantry. This angered the chantry, and the hostility between the two factions finally broke out in open war. The chantry says the elves struck first, but I do not know whether to believe it. The chantry declared a wholly exalted march against the elves, named for Andraste's similar march against Tevinter. During the exalted march of the Dales, the elven cities were sacked, and the elven state completely dissolved. Some of the elves bitterly accepted their fates and surrendered to human rule, living in the human cities as second-class citizens. But others, still fiercely proud of their heritage, refused to bow to the humans, and instead became homeless wanderers. They were the elves of the Dales, the Dalish.
What do you know about Andraste?
Andraste was the Maker's chosen. The Maker had long since abandoned the world when the sound of her singing turned his ear. Beauty, grace, and wisdom enraptured him, and he offered to take her from this flawed world to become his divine bride. But Andraste had an earthly husband and would not forsake him. Instead, she beseeched the Maker to return to his people once more. So earnest was her plea that the Maker was moved, and promised that he would create a paradise on earth if all abandoned their false gods and turned once more to him. And this is why Andraste began her exalted march on the idolaters of the Tevinter Imperium. The Maker granted her his powers with which to smite her enemies. Andraste brought the Imperium to its knees, and her victories converted many to the worship of the Maker.
How did Andraste die?
Alas, it was the frailties of men that betrayed and killed Andraste. Her earthly husband, Maferath, a chieftain of the Alamari tribes himself, grew jealous as his wife's popularity and influence overshadowed his own. She was also revered as the Maker's betrothed, and Maferath began to see their own bond waning in significance as Andraste became ever more devoted to the Maker. Out of envy and spite, Maferath made a pact with the Archon Hessarian of Tevinter, allowing his beloved Andraste to be ambushed and captured. Andraste was burnt at the stake in Minrathous, the capital of Tevinter.
But Tevinter has a chantry, doesn't it?
The Tevinter chantry claims that in Andraste's last moments, Hessarian's heart softened, and he heard the voice of the Maker telling him to end her suffering. He plunged his sword into her heart, and as her blood washed over his hands, he became one of the faithful. Dissenters said that the Archon only converted because he could not stem the tide of Andraste's cult, and was forced to do so to stay in power. We will never know for sure.
Well, Morrigan set herself up really far away from everybody. Let's talk to her.
What do you wish of me?
I'd like to ask you something.
If you must.
How did you become a shape changer?
I was not born such. 'Tis a skill of Flemeth's, taught over many years in the wilds. The chastened have tales of we witches, saying that we assume the forms of creatures to watch them from hiding. When a child is alone and separate from his tribe, that is when we strike, dragging the young boy kicking and screaming to our lair to be devoured. A most amusing legend.
But it's just a legend, right?
So I assume. My mother has walked the wilds far longer than I. Who am I to suggest what things she has done and not done in her past? Why do you ask? Is there something specific you wish to know?
Can you change into other human forms as well?
The form of an animal is different from my own. One may study the creature, learn to move as it does, think as it does. In time, this allows one to become as it is. I gain nothing by studying another human. I already am the same as they are. I learn nothing. So the answer is no, my human form is the only one I possess.
Can anyone become a shape changer?
Anyone with sufficient will. But the act of transformation is a magical one. 'Tis a spell and thus requires a mage's talents. If you had a notion to learn such a skill for yourself, sadly, you must remain disappointed.
Do you spend a lot of time as an animal?
There were nights when the wilds called to me, 'tis true. You look upon the world around you and you think you know it well. I have smelled it as a wolf, listened as a cat, prowled shadows that you never dreamed existed. But my life is as a human. I am under no illusions to the contrary.
And what do other animals think of you when you're changed?
They do not shy away from me. To their senses, I believe I seem like any other of their species. As to what they think, I truly cannot say. Just as I am still human, no matter my form, they are still animals. Thus they cannot speak, even were I to ask.
I've never heard of magic like that before.
No? 'Tis not unheard of in the remote corners of the world. There are traditions of magic outside of the circle of magi, despite what those mages would have you believe. Some of these traditions are old, indeed, passed down as carefully guarded lore from one generation to the next. The zealots of the chantry would uproot all such practitioners if they could, but as luck have it, some still exist. My mother is such a one.
Isn't that sort of magic open to abuse?
Not all apostates use the forbidden blood arts. Maleficarum do, but to condemn all who do not fall under the circle's thrall for the sake of what might be is a dangerous path to walk. There are those who look on the word apostate as meaning freedom.
That's all I wanted to ask.
Indeed. Have you an opinion on my abilities, then? Am I an unnatural abomination to be put to the torch?
I think your abilities sound quite useful.
A most practical opinion. Far more so than any man I have spoken to. But enough of such talk, let us proceed lest the dust gather on us. What do you wish of me?
Did you grow up in the Korkari wilds?
Why do you ask me such questions? I do not probe you for pointless information, do I?
You could if you wanted to.
Oh, what luck. What is it you asked if I grew up in the wilds? A curious question. Where else would you picture me? For many years it was simply Flemeth and I. The wilds and its creatures were more real to me than Flemeth's tales of the world of man. In time I grew curious. I left the wilds to explore what lay beyond, never for long. Brief forays into a civilized wilderness.
But you kept going back to the wilds.
Would you not do the same? Your world is an unforgiving and cold place. The wilds I hail from is home to me, and I a natural denizen. For all that I had been taught, however, the truth of the civilized lands proved to be overwhelming. I was unfamiliar with so much. So confident and bold was I, yet there was much that Flemeth could never have prepared me for.
Were you hurt?
Was I hurt? What manner of simpering weakling do you take me for? Only once was I accused of being a witch of the wilds, and that by a chastened who happened to be traveling with a merchant caravan. He pointed and gasped, and began shouting in his strange language, and most assumed he was casting some curse upon me. I acted the terrified girl, and naturally, he was arrested.
That was quick thinking.
Men are always willing to believe two things about a woman. One, that she is weak, and two, that she finds him attractive. I played the weakling and battered my eyelashes at the captain of the guard. Child's play. The point being that I was able to move through human lands fairly easily. Whatever humans think a witch of the wild looks like, 'tis not I. Not that I did not have trouble. There are things about human society which have always puzzled me, such as the touching. Why all the touching for a simple greeting?
Touching? Like a handshake?
To begin with, yes. What is the point of touching my hand? I find it an offensive intrusion. There were many nuances that Flemeth could never tell me of. When to look into another's eyes. How to eat at a table. How to bargain without offending. None of these things I knew. I still do not understand it all, truth be told, but then I gave up long ago any hope of doing so. When I returned to the wilds last, I swore to Flemeth that I had no intention of leaving again.
Yet, here you are.
Yes, here I am. Well, let's get on with it before the ground opens up and swallows us, yes?
Have you ever been hunted by the Chantry?
My mother has been hunted from time to time, yes, by Templar fools like Alistair, which should tell you how successful they generally were. Flemeth made a bit of a game of it, in fact. The Templars would come again, and she would look at me and smile and say that the fun was to begin once more.
You really had no trouble with them.
I am unsure. I was too young to understand, and perhaps 'twas bravado on Flemeth's part, or perhaps she was merely amused. I will never know. Flemeth would warn them, once. 'Twas a warning they inevitably failed to heed. And then the true game began. Often Flemeth would use me as bait. A little girl to scream and run and lure the Templars deeper into the wilds and to their doom.
Surely more would have followed.
Sometimes. Eventually. Thankfully, the wilds is a vast place. Once they found us, Flemeth would simply move us elsewhere, and we would be lost within the forest once again. I did not understand the danger we faced until I was much older. I had never heard of apostates or maleficarum.
Do you still think that was fun?
I think that my mother made it fun so that a child did not learn to fear. And I think that it was necessary. There are no trials for apostates, no prisons, no mercy. There are only absolutes, so only survival matters. If the wilds have taught me anything, 'tis this. First, you must survive. Do you disagree?
You're probably right.
An enlightened view, or at least an agreeable one. Enough of this talk. Let us return to the task at hand.
Is Flemeth really what she seems to be?
Well, that depends, does it not? What does she seem to be?
Human?
Oh, she certainly was human. Once. Tell me, how much do you know of the tale? The one that the chastened still tell of my mother, to frighten them into obedience.
Well, we've read the Codex articles, a couple of them, and we've heard the tale from Leliana, so quite a bit, but I'm more interested in the truth.
I can relay what Flemeth once told me herself, and you can decide whether or not 'tis the truth, if you desire.
That sounds interesting.
As the tale is sung by the bards, there was a time when Flemeth was young and beautiful, a fair lass in a land of barbarian men, the desire of any who saw her.
Just how long ago is this?
Many centuries, before this land was even named Ferelden. The tales say that Flemeth fell in love with Osen the bard, and fled the castle of her husband, the dread Lord Conobar, and that he swore vengeance for her infidelity. In truth, my mother claims that 'twas Osen who was her husband, and Conobar the jealous lord who looked on from afar. Lord Conobar approached young Osen and offered him wealth and power in exchange for his lovely wife, and Osen agreed.
He sold his wife to another man.
The life of a bard is a poor one, and love fades in the wake of hunger. 'Twas Flemeth who suggested the arrangement. All would have been well had Lord Conobar kept his end of the bargain. But he was a foul man who bargained with coin he did not possess. Osen was led off to a field and slain, left for dead. Flemeth spoke to the spirits and learned of the deed, and swore revenge.
But wasn't she now married to a wealthier man?
That was not the point. Conobar had no honor, so she would not have him. Flemeth begged the spirits to aid her, and 'twas they who slew Conobar. The demon the legend tells of came later. Lord Conobar's allies chased Flemeth, you see. Chased her to the wilds, and there she hid. There she found the demon, and he made her strong. The legends all speak of the great hero Cormac, he who defeated Flemeth and her great army when she invaded the lowlands centuries later. All lies.
Which? She never invaded? Or he never defeated her?
The truth of the matter is that there was never an invasion. As Flemeth tells it, the Chastened never raised an army under her banner, and she never fought with any warrior named Cormac. Cormac led a brutal civil war against his own people, and later claimed it was to vanquish evil that had taken root amongst the lords. Thus, he was hailed a hero. Flemeth was only attached to the legend much later. Perhaps 'twas due to the great war with the Chastened that eventually came, but Mother claims not to know how it began.
Do you believe her version?
I do not believe everything that Flemeth claims. Oft it seems her bitterness has colored her memories. But on the whole, yes, I believe this tale, if not all.
How is it that Flemeth has survived for so long?
The demon within her has transformed her into something else. An abomination, perhaps some would say. I know not. I only know my mother is clever, and she is part of the wilds as it is part of her. But she is no immortal. She bleeds. A blade in her heart would kill her like any other, were it lucky enough to find her.
Aren't abominations usually insane horrors?
How often is this usually? Always? If not always, then when is it not true? There are more things in this world and the next than you or I could ever hope to understand. What Flemeth became is a mystery. I suspect, even to her.
The legend tells of Flemeth having many daughters.
You ask if I have sisters? I have asked of this myself. The stories tell of many witches of the wilds after all, not just the one. And these tales existed long before I did. Flemeth refuses to speak of other daughters, if they existed. So, should I believe I am her first? I doubt that too.
Why would she refuse to speak of them?
The Chastened tell of a falling out between Flemeth and her daughters. They say that one day she hunted them all through the wilds and ate their hearts. It may be true. I have never seen another witch or heard of one. Perhaps one day Flemeth will eat my heart as well.
An interesting story. Thank you.
Flemeth tells it with far more embellishment than I, but you are welcome. Dare I ask of your own mother? Few are abominations of legend, 'tis true, but I find myself curious nevertheless.
My mother died. Recently, in fact.
Ah, then you have my sympathies for what it is worth. Which is very little, I am certain. It matters not. Let us move on.
Alright, that looks like everything Morrigan has to say, at least for now. Let's speak with Alistair next.
What do you need?
Do you want to talk about Duncan?
You don't have to do that. I know you didn't know him as long as I did.
He was like a father to you. I understand.
I should have handled it better. Duncan warned me right from the beginning that this could happen. Any of us could die in battle. I shouldn't have lost it, not when so much is riding on us, not with the Blight and everything. I'm sorry.
No harm done, Alistair.
I'd like to have a proper funeral for him. Maybe once this is all done, if we're still alive. I don't think he had any family to speak of.
He had you.
I suppose he did. It probably sounds stupid, but part of me wishes I was with him, in the battle. I feel like I abandoned him.
No, I understand completely.
Of course. I'd be dead then, wouldn't I? It's not like that would make him happier. I think he came from High Ever, or so he said. Maybe I'll go up there sometime. See about putting up something in his honor. I don't know. Have you had someone close to you die? Not that I mean to pry, I'm just...
Well, Alistair, my entire family was murdered just recently.
Oh, of course. How stupid of me to forget. Here I am going on and on about Duncan, and you... I am so sorry. Thank you. Really, I mean it. It was good to talk about it, at least a little.
Maybe I'll go to High Ever with you, when you go.
I'd like that. So would he, I think.
What can a Templar do, exactly?
Essentially, they're trained to fight. The Chantry would tell you that the Templars exist simply to defend. But don't let them fool you. They're an army. The other main purpose for a Templar is, of course, to hunt mages. To that end, we train in talents that drain mana and disrupt spells.
So, couldn't others learn these talents?
Perhaps, but there usually isn't much of an opportunity. The Chantry keeps a close rein on its Templars. We are given lyrium to help develop our magical talents, you see. Which means we become addicted. And since the Chantry controls the lyrium trade with the dwarves, well, I'm sure you can put two and two together.
So, you were addicted to this lyrium?
Thankfully, no. You only start receiving lyrium once you've taken your vows. You don't need lyrium in order to learn the Templar talents. Lyrium just makes Templars' talents more effective. Or so I was told. Maybe it doesn't even do that. The Chantry usually doesn't let their Templars get away, either, so they can spread their secrets. I'm a bit of an exception. Lucky me.
Tell me about the Grey Wardens.
Such as they are.
Where are the nearest Grey Wardens from here?
That's a good question. There's plenty in Orlais, but who knows where they might be found. And the nearest Orlesian city is weeks away. If we go north and cross the sea, There's bound to be some in the free marches. Again, however, I just don't know where. I don't know anything about Grey Wardens in other lands.
Is there a headquarters somewhere?
Here in Ferelden, there's our compound in Denerim at the palace, but that's it. Loghain will have control over that and be watching it, no doubt. Beyond that, the only place I know of is Weishaupt Fortress. That's the headquarters of all Grey Wardens in the Anderfells, 1,000 miles from here. But I've no idea how to even contact them. So unless we try to get back to the compound in Denerim, I suppose the answer is no. There's nowhere for us to go.
So what happens now that there's just 2 of us?
I imagine that eventually the Grey Wardens outside of Ferelden will wonder what's happened. Why there's no contact from Duncan or someone. They'll send someone eventually. Though who knows what Loghain's people in Denerim will tell them. Maybe they won't send anyone. We could try to contact them. But that would mean leaving Ferelden, and even if we did, they couldn't come back with us in time to stop the Blight. So that means whatever happens, it's up to us.
Will we need to start rebuilding the Order?
I mean, eventually we would have to use the joining to make more Grey Wardens, right? But I don't know how to do the joining, or what's involved. I know it involves lyrium and some other magic, and that it's really difficult to prepare, but that's it. Unless we can find out more about the joining, I guess we better get used to the idea that there might only be 2 of us for now. Until more come from elsewhere.
I won't ask him about leaving. That seems cowardly. So how did you become a Grey Warden?
Same way you did. You drink some blood, you choke on it, and pass out. You haven't forgotten already, have you?
Aha, very funny.
I do my best. What can I say? Let's see, I was in the Chantry before. I trained for many years to become a Templar, in fact. That's where I learned most of my skills.
You don't seem like the religious sort.
You're telling me I was banished to the kitchens to scour the pots more times than I can count. And that's a lot. I can count pretty high. The Grand Cleric didn't want to let me go. Duncan was forced to conscript me, actually, and was she ever furious when he did. I thought she was going to have us both arrested. I was lucky.
Why did the Grand Cleric want to keep you?
I wondered that myself. It's not as if she valued me highly. I think she just didn't want to give anything to the Grey Wardens, is all. The Chantry didn't lose much. And I think I can do more fighting the Blight anyhow, rather than sitting in a temple somewhere. I'll always be thankful to Duncan for recruiting me. If it hadn't been for him, you know, I wouldn't have.
He was a good man.
He was. A good man who didn't deserve his fate. That much I'm sure of. Come on, let's go. I think I'm done talking.
So you said you were raised by the Chantry.
Oh, did I say that? I meant that dogs raised me. Giant slobbering dogs from the Anderfells. A whole pack of them, in fact.
Really? That must have been tough for them.
Well, they were flying dogs, you see. Surprisingly strict parents, too. And devout Andrastians to boot.
And these dogs sold you to the Chantry, I take it.
Oh, there you go, listening to me again. You'd think you'd have gotten past that already. I ended up in the Chantry, sure, but I didn't start there. Let's see, how do I explain this? I'm a bastard. And before you make any smart comments, I mean the fatherless kind. My mother was a serving girl in Redcliffe Castle who died when I was very young. Our Lehman wasn't my father, but he took me in anyhow and put a roof over my head. He was good to me, and he didn't have to be. I respect the man, and I don't blame him anymore for sending me off to the Chantry once I was old enough.
But you blamed him then, I take it.
I was young and resentful and not very pious. Of course I blamed him. I remember screaming at him like a little child. Well, I was a child, so I doubt he was surprised. Our Lehman eventually married a young woman from Orlais, which caused all sorts of problems between him and the king because it was so soon after the war. But he loved her. Anyhow, then you, Alistair, resented the rumors which pegged me as his bastard. They weren't true, but of course they existed. The Isle didn't care, but she did. So off I was packed to the nearest monastery at age 10. Just as well. The Arlessa made sure the castle wasn't a home to me by that point. She despised me.
What an awful thing to do to a child.
Maybe. She felt threatened by my presence, I can see that now. I can't say I blame her. She wondered if the rumors were true herself, I bet. I remember I had an amulet with Andraste's holy symbol on it. The only thing I had of my mother's. I was so furious at being sent away, I tore it off and threw it at the wall and it shattered. Stupid, stupid thing to do. The Jarl came by the monastery a few times to see how I was, but I was stubborn. I hated it there, and blamed him for everything. And eventually, he just stopped coming.
Are you sure he isn't your father?
Yes, I'm quite sure. At any rate, I don't look anything like him, you'll see for yourself. Not that it stopped the rumors any. All I know is that the Jarl is a good man, and well loved by the people. He also was King Kaelin's uncle, so he has a personal motivation to see Loghain pay for what he did. Anyway, that's really all there is to the story.
Could you teach others to become a Templar?
I suppose I could, but I really would rather not. When the Grand Cleric let Duncan recruit me, she made me swear never to reveal Templar secrets outside of the Chantry. I'd rather not go back on my word.
Very well. I'll respect your word.
Ask me later, perhaps. Maybe I'll change my mind. This is not something small you're asking, after all.
Why have you remained a Templar if you hate the Chantry?
Have you seen the uniform? It's not only stylish, but well made. I'm a sucker for good tailoring.
Oh? I don't think I've ever seen you wearing it.
I keep it hidden under my pillow. Sometimes I'll take it out just so I can hug it fondly and remember the good old days. Brings a tear to the eyes, you know.
And what's the real reason?
You don't really want to know about my being a Templar, do you? It's really quite boring.
Then make up something more exciting.
You know, I like the way you think. But I guess if you're really curious, there's no harm in obliging. I have a couple of interesting-looking moles I can show you later, too, if you're interested. The truth of the matter is that I did hate going to the monastery. The initiates from poor families thought I put on airs, while the noble ones called me a bastard and ignored me. I felt like Al Eamon had cast me off, unwanted, and I was determined to be bitter. But I took some solace in the training itself, I guess. I was actually quite good at it.
What did you enjoy about the training?
The education, mostly, but also the discipline. You need to have a disciplined mind in order to use the abilities we have. It was difficult, but rewarding. I never really felt at home anywhere, though, until I joined the Grey Wardens. And Duncan felt my Templar abilities might be useful for when we encountered Darkspawn magic, so I kept it up. What about you? Do you have anywhere you consider home?
I guess my home is with the Grey Wardens now. With you.
It is. I didn't know you felt that way. We won't always be traveling like this, you know. Once the war is over, once the Blight is... well, a time will come when we'll have to think about having a real home again. Though that seems like a far ways off. And I suppose the Grey Wardens are gone for good. Either way.
They can be rebuilt.
I suppose you're right. We can create new Grey Wardens, but we'll never get back those we lost. I wonder if it would ever feel the same. Anyhow, now I've sidetracked us. We'd better get back to what we're supposed to be doing right now.
Okay, that's all the party members, but we do have a couple more people in camp we could speak to.
You're a hard woman to find. Where are my manners? The name is Levy Dryden. Did Duncan ever mention me? Levy of the Coins? Levy the Trader?
Dryden's a black name. Your family lost its lands and titles.
But Tairn Cuslin's daughter should be well aware that in politics things are seldom as they seem. Say what you will of my family, we're ardent Warden supporters and have been since the beginning. But here I am carrying on while you have a blight to stop. Don't want to waste your time. But you see, Duncan promised that together we'd look into something important for the Wardens. And for me. But poor Duncan's... well, no more. A tragedy it is, at that. But I know he would want his work carried on. His pledge fulfilled.
What promise did Duncan make to you?
Well, as you know, my family's name is mud around noble circles. My great-great-grandmother, Sophia Dryden, was the last Warden commander of Ferelden back when the Wardens were known as freeloaders. So King Arland banished the Wardens, and he took House Dryden's land and titles.
That's a bit drastic, isn't it?
And then some. Not much is known about that time. After King Arland died, there was a civil war, loads worse than this one. And our family was on the run, hunted by enemies, with nary a friend in the world. But Drydens are tough. We rebuilt, became merchants, and we never lost our pride.
So what favor did you ask of Duncan?
I asked for the truth. My family reveres Sophia Dryden. We know she died at the old Grey Warden base, Soldier's Peak. We want evidence to clear her name. It won't restore our land or our titles, but it'll restore our honour.
I've never even heard of Soldier's Peak.
Well, no one's been to Soldier's Peak since Ireland's days. At least none that's come back. I spent years mapping the maze of tunnels to the peak, and I found the way a few years back. So I went to Duncan, I did, and I said that he could reclaim the old base and my family could have its honour.
What do you need from me?
I can pick my way through the tunnels at the base of Soldier's Peak, but the place, well, they say it's haunted, and it'll be dangerous for certain. Will you think on it, at least?
Your family's faith will be rewarded. I will help you.
1,000 blessings upon you, Warden. I'll mark down the location on your map. When you arrive, we'll pick our way through the tunnels together.
And then I guess he just buggers off till then.
Ah, it's good to see you, my timely rescuer. Bodon Fennick, at your service, once again. I saw your camp and remember the kind offer that you made the last time we met. And is there anywhere safer for a poor merchant and his son to sleep? I think not. I'm perfectly willing to offer you a fine discount for the inconvenience of our presence. How does that sound? Good? Yes?
What are you selling exactly?
Anything, everything, but all of the finest quality. No cheap trinkets here. And my boy Sandal happens to be a bit of a hand with enchantments. Oh, yes. Sadly, it also makes us a target for bandits and the like. If there were spare hands to hire as guards, I would have done so long ago.
Have you been following us?
Following you? I'm not even certain where you're going, my friend. And quite frankly, it's none of my business. Trust me when I say that my encountering you here was serendipity and nothing more. I travel a lot, so I'm bound to meet everyone on the road eventually. If you prefer, I'll take my boy and be on my way. But regretfully, you're the safest spot on this road, without a doubt.
You're free to stay. Just mind yourselves.
Wonderful. Thank the kind lady, won't you, boy?
Thank you, kind lady.
We won't be a bother to you and your companions, I assure you. If you should need enchantments, simply talk to my boy. Otherwise, come speak with me. If there's anything I can do for you, please, please tell me.
So, what's your story exactly?
Well, if you're really interested, I suppose it wouldn't hurt to tell you. I am originally from Orzammar, the famed dwarven city that lies beneath the stately Frostback Mountains. I was a merchant there, too. Merchant caste. These things are in the blood, you know. You can't just leave them behind. I ran a fairly successful business. Rare artifacts, you know. Old things, grand things. The nobles loved them. Reminded them of the lost glory days, I suppose.
Why did you leave?
One day, a noble woman came to my store. She looked around for a bit and then started shrieking in dismay. Apparently, she believed that a pair of braces I had for sale once belonged to her brother. He'd been lost in a cave-in, you see, while on an expedition to clear out the Darkspawn from one of the tunnels running close to the city. They were made specially for him. They're unique, she shrieked. He stole them from my poor brother's corpse. She had me arrested on the spot, of course. Nobles, they're touchy like that.
And did you steal them?
Well, I didn't steal them. You see, I'd been paying these castless thugs to venture out into the deep roads for me. The lost tigers. They're full of things that people left behind. Sometimes you can find a treasure. Something worth a little gold.
I see.
The noblewoman, she wasn't too happy with the theft of her brother's braces. I don't know what they planned for me, and I didn't want to find out. Bribed the guard that was watching me and took off for the surface first opportunity I got. Never looked back.
And now here you are.
Yes, here I am. Now, is there anything the boy or I can get you?
You didn't mention your son in your tale.
Ah, yes. I'm married to a fine woman back in Denerim, it's true. She'd give me a son if she could, but that's not likely to ever be. Sandal here. I found him in the deep roads years ago. Abandoned, I think, and he was never quite right in the head. I took him in, and I brought him with me when I came here to the surface. He may not be my blood, true, but I think of him as one.
We left Orzammar.
That's right, boy. Maybe one day we'll see it again.
That was generous of you.
It's not as if I don't benefit, mind you. Turns out the boy's a natural working with enchantments. He might have even been lyrium-addled. I never thought of that before, to be honest. Happens sometimes. He can work an enchantment into just about anything, however, given some time. Could probably open his own shop, if he knew how.
Enchantment.
Well, he does seem to enjoy it, at least.
But where do these goods come from? Not the deep roads.
Look, we don't rob people, all right? We don't take things from people that need them. The things in the Lost Tigers, what good did they do lying there? I brought them back to Orzammar, where people could look at them and remember. It's not all that different up here. There are places long abandoned by the humans everywhere. Even more now with the Darkspawn coming.
What do you mean?
People flee from the Blight with good reason, but they forget things. Things with value and meaning. They leave them behind because they're frightened and desperate. And sometimes, my boy and I, we find our way to these places before the Horde descends, and we save these things. I take them away so the Darkspawn don't get them. Is that so bad? They destroy everything they touch.
The Blight will not last forever.
No, of course not. And when it ends, I will go back to finding ruins, or move on. I don't really have much of a choice.
Have you heard any rumors?
I heard a strange rumor the other day. King Cailan was not really Merrick's son, you see. Merrick's real son is hidden in the bowels of Denerim's palace and has been since he was born. I suppose they feed him cakes all day to keep him content. Maybe he's simple. Or a mage. Merrick's real son, a mage. Can you imagine? That's what I've heard on the road, anyhow. Take it for what it is. Habron, daughter of the Earl of Southreach, has spent an exorbitant amount of her father's coin buying puppies. No one knows what happens to the puppies, and she buys a new one every week. That's what I've heard on the road, anyhow. Take it for what it is.
That's a somewhat sinister rumor. Why would she always need new puppies?
Unless Isolde, the young Orlesian woman that married Earl Eamon, I hear tell she tried to poison her husband so she could marry his brother, Bantegan. Maker's honest truth. That's what I've heard on the road, anyhow. Take it for what it is. Earl Urian wasn't truly killed at Ostagar. His son, Lord Von, hired Antivan crows to kill his father before he ever reached the battlefield, only to first be killed by a mob of elves himself. That's what I've heard on the road, anyhow. Take it for what it is. There's talk that King Cailan was cheating on the Queen and she found out about it. That's why Tyrn Logain abandoned Cailan at Ostagar. That's what I've heard on the road, anyhow. Take it for what it is.
That would be interesting, but I don't know that Kalen had it in him.
I don't know what to tell you. Nothing I can think of at the moment.
Oh good, far fewer rumors from him than from the innkeep. An episode or so ago. Looks like I might need to talk to Sandal about the enchantment.
Hello.
The boy's a bit simple, but he's rather good with enchantments. One of those tranquil fellas actually called him a... what was it now? A savant. I had no idea such a thing existed.
I want some enchanting done.
Enchantment!
I can put something on Oathkeeper. Oh, let's put a slow rune on. That should be interesting.
You and your friends are formidable folk, indeed. It's good to have you along on the road. I'm sure you'll be pleased with the goods my boy and I have collected, and with your discount.
Oh, he has a backpack. Gotta have that backpack. I think these gifts are from the DLC, if I remember right. See if I can remember which ones go to whom. And we'll distribute those gifts and make sure everyone is kitted up. All right. Yep, those gifts definitely put us ahead a bit. So, plenty of new skills. We'll also worry about talking to everybody again later because we have spent so much time in camp. I believe I have everyone equipped. I've sold everything that it made sense to sell. Let us be on our way. We'll take Morrigan,
Yes.
Alistair, and Leliana.
Indeed.
Now, where to first? I am tempted to head straight to Redcliffe. I think that is what we will do. We'll go to Redcliffe first. Stopped on the road.
You have coin, stranger? With Orzammar closed off, old Tegrin can give you a discount. Fine weapon and arms, dwarven made.
What's going on in Orzammar?
There's two things I'm here for. Travel or trade. Understand?
Let's see this discount of yours. Well, he had a couple things that seemed worth it. I'll equip those right now. And there were also a couple of gifts. We'll wait till we're back in camp again to do those.
Look, can we talk for a moment? I need to tell you something. I should probably have told you earlier.
What's on your mind?
I told you before how Al Eamon raised me, right? That my mother was a serving girl at the castle and he took me in. The reason he did that was because, well, because my father was King Marek, which made Kalen my half-brother, I suppose.
So, you're not just a bastard, but a royal bastard.
Ha! Yes, I guess it does at that. I should use that line more often. I would have told you, but it never really meant anything to me. I was inconvenient, a possible threat to Kalen's rule, and so they kept me secret. I'd never talked about it to anyone. Everyone who knew either resented me for it or they coddled me. Even Duncan kept me out of the fighting because of it. I didn't want you to know as long as possible. I'm sorry.
Does Loghain know?
Why wouldn't he? He was King Marek's best friend. I don't know if that means anything, though. I certainly never considered the idea that it might ever be important. At any rate, that's it. That's what I had to tell you. I thought you should know about it.
You're the heir to the throne, then?
Let's hope not. I'm the son of a commoner and a Grey Warden to boot. It was made very clear to me early on that there was no room for me raising any rebellions or such nonsense. And that's fine by me. Now, if there's an heir to be found, it's Arl Eamon himself. He's not of royal blood, but he is Kaelin's uncle, and more importantly, very popular with the people. Though, if he's really as sick as we've heard... Oh no, I don't want to think about that. I really don't. So there you have it. Now can we move on? And I'll just pretend you still think I'm some nobody who was too lucky to die with the rest of the Grey Wardens.
As you command, my prince.
Oh, lovely. I'm going to regret this. Somehow I just know it.
So there's Alistair's big secret. Just about every character has one, and that one is his. Let's make our way into town, and we will probably have to call it there. Sorry that not much has really happened this episode. It's been more dialogue and lore and getting to know people, but that is the way of RPGs at times.
I thought I saw travelers coming down the road, though I scarcely believed it. Have you come to help us?
What do you mean? Is there a problem?
So you don't know? Has nobody out there heard?
I've heard Arl Eamon is sick, if that's what you mean.
He could be dead for all we know. Nobody's heard from the castle in days. We're under attack. Monsters come out of the castle every night and attack us until dawn. Everyone's been fighting and dying.
Apparently everyone seems to agree that a blight is the perfect time to start killing each other. Marvelous, really.
We've no army to defend us. No Arl and no king to send us help. So many are dead. And those left are terrified they're next.
Hold on, what is this evil that's attacking you?
I don't rightly know. I'm sorry, nobody does. I should take you to Ban Tegan. He's all that's holding us together. He'll want to see you.
Ban Tegan, Arl Eamon's brother. He's here.
Yes. It's not far, if you'll come with me.
All right, let's go then.
It's Thomas, yes? And who are these people with you? They are obviously not simple travelers.
No, my lord. They just arrived, and I thought you would want to see them.
Well done, Thomas. Greetings, friends. My name is Tegan, Ban of Rainersphere, brother to the Arl.
I remember you, Ban Tegan. Though the last time we met, I was a lot younger and covered in mud.
Covered in mud? Alistair? It is you, isn't it? You're alive! This is wonderful news.
Still alive, yes. Though not for long if Ten Loghain has anything to say about it.
Indeed. Loghain would have us believe all Grey Wardens died along with my nephew, amongst other things.
There's just something I love so much about covered in mud. Alistair! Must be him! It really kind of sets a picture of Alistair's childhood. But your nephew?
I refer to Kaelin, of course. Our sister was Queen Rowan, King Merrick's wife and Kaelin's mother, make her rest her soul.
So, you are a Grey Warden as well? Is it possible we've met? You seem very familiar.
You may have known my father, Tyrn Cousland.
Ah, yes, that's it, exactly. A pleasure to meet you indeed, though I wish it were under better circumstances. You're here to see my brother. Unfortunately, that might be a problem. Eamon is gravely ill. No one has heard from the castle in days. No guards patrol the walls, and no one has responded to my shouts. The attack started a few nights ago. Evil things surged from the castle. We drove them back, but many perished during the assault.
What evil things are you talking about?
Some call them the Walking Dead, decomposing corpses returning to life with a hunger for human flesh. They hit again the next night. Each night they come, with greater numbers. With Kaelin dead and Loghain starting a war over the throne, no one responds to my urgent calls for help. I have a feeling tonight's assault will be the worst yet. Alistair, I hate to ask, but I desperately need the help of you and your friends.
It isn't just up to me. Though the Grey Wardens don't stand much chance against Loghain without Arleman.
Of course we'll help.
How pointless to help these villagers fight an impossible battle. One would think we had enough to contend with elsewhere.
Thank you. Thank you. This means more to me than you can guess. Thomas, please tell Murdoch what transpired. Then return to your post.
Yes, my lord.
Now then, there is much to do before night falls. I put 2 men in charge of the defense outside. Murdoch, the village mayor, is outside the chantry. Sir Perth, one of Eamon's knights, is just up the cliff at the windmill, watching the castle. You may discuss with them the preparations for the coming battle.
I want to discuss the situation with you.
Of course.
You have some of Arl Eamon's knights here.
I have those few who returned from their quest. You know of this, yes?
Their search for the Urn of Sacred Ashes.
Yes, I question Isolde's decision to send so many knights in search of this relic. But I am a practical man, whereas she is a woman of great faith. Sir Perth was one of the knights sent on this quest. Perhaps you should speak to him if you wish to learn more.
Why are you in the chantry with the villagers?
Sir Perth insists. He wants me to be with the villagers, so everyone he needs to protect is in one place. I don't mind, to be honest. The point of all this is to protect the villagers, and I can do that best here. This is the last line of defense, should things go amiss.
Do you need more men in here with you?
We could bring some men in to stand beside me, but I'd rather keep the monsters away from the villagers if possible.
What exactly are these things that attack the village?
I do not know. They seem to be walking corpses, men with rotting flesh that continue to attack even with the gravest injuries.
Undead, spirits possessing the dead. There could be several causes behind such a thing, none of them pleasant.
So what happens after this battle is over?
Hopefully we can find the source and stop it before it causes any more damage. With luck, we'll also find Eamon and be able to help him.
I should get back to work.
Very well. Luck be with you, my friend.
Okay. I think that will be a good place to end for today. Let's read a few of our Codex entries and then call it a night. The Imperial Chantry. There are those who would tell you that the Chantry is the same everywhere as it is here, that the Divine in Val Royeaux reigns supreme in the eyes of the Maker, and that this fact is unquestioned throughout Thedas. Do not believe it. The Maker's second commandment, magic must serve man, not rule over him, never held the same meaning within the ancient Tevinter Imperium as it did elsewhere. The Chantry there interpreted the rule as meaning that mages should never control the minds of other men, and that otherwise their magic should benefit the rulers of men as much as possible. When the clerics of Tevinter altered the Chant of Light to reflect this interpretation of the commandment, the Divine in Val Royeaux ordered the clerics to revert to the original chant. They refused, claiming corruption within Val Royeaux, an argument that grew until in 487 Towers, the Chantry in Tevinter elected its own legitimate and uncorrupted Divine Valhale, who was not only male, but also happened to be one of the most prominent members of the Tevinter Circle of Magi. This black divine was reviled outside Tevinter, his existence an offense to the Chantry in Val Royeaux. After 4 exalted marches to dislodge these rebels, all that the Chantry in Val Royeaux accomplished was to cement the separation. While most aspects of the Imperial Chantry's teaching are the same, prohibitions against magic have been weakened, and male priests have become more prevalent. The Circle of the Magi today rules Tevinter directly, ever since the Archon Nomoran was elected in 734 Storm, directly from the ranks of the Enchanters, to great applause from the public. He dispensed with the old rules forbidding mages from taking part in politics, and within a century, the true rulers within the various imperial houses, the mages, took their places openly within the government. The Imperial Divine is now always drawn from the ranks of the First Enchanters, and operates as Divine and Grand Enchanter both. This is utter heresy to any member of the Chantry outside Tevinter, a return to the days of the Magisters, which brought the blights down upon us. But it exists, and even though we have left the Tevinter Imperium to the mercies of the dread Kunari, still they have endured. Further confrontation between the Black Divine and our so-called White Divine is inevitable. From Edicts of the Black Divine by Father David of Corinus, 811 Blessed. The Sacred Ashes of Andraste. Only one person witnessed Maferath's betrayal, Havard the Aegis, a childhood friend of Maferath. He accompanied his chief to the meeting with the Tevinters, not realizing what was planned. When he understood that Maferath was giving Andraste over to be executed, Havard, unwilling to draw swords against his friend and liege, placed himself between Andraste and the Tevinter soldiers. The Tevinters struck him down, and Maferath left him for dead. Gravely wounded, Havard made his way to the gates of Minrathous to stop the execution. When he reached it, the terrible deed was already done, the armies on the plains long since dispersed. Havard, cursing his weakness, gathered the earthly remains of Andraste that had been left to the wind and rain, and wept. When his fingers touched the pile of ash, his ears filled with song, and he saw before him a vision of Andraste, dressed in cloth made of starlight. She knelt at his side, saying, "The Maker shall never forget you, so long as I remember." The song faded, and the vision with it, and Havard was alone. But his wounds were healed. With new strength, Havard took up the ashes of Our Lady and bore them back to the lands of the Alamari. Fearing that Maferath's supporters would defile them, Havard took the ashes of Andraste to a secluded place high in the mountains, and there he carved from the living rock an urn to hold them. Time passed, and the whereabouts of the urn faded from memory. Perhaps it was the Maker's will that only the most worthy should find his beloved's final resting place. Now we have only the legends, such as that of the Chevalier Lothering, who quested to find the urn to save his dying daughter, and either found it in time to cure her, or returned 100 years after her death. The ballads end less than certain on that point. From Thetis, Myths and Legends, by Brother Genitivi. The History of the Drydens. In the years following the siege of Soldier's Peak, all those who carried the Dryden name were hunted by King Arlen's forces. Our noble Dryden name was smeared, and all lands and holdings belonging to the Drydens were seized by the crown. The king feared that the rebellion started by Sophia would be kept alive by her loyal friends and family, and anyone with connections to the Drydens suffered greatly. It is little wonder, then, that the few remaining Drydens found themselves with no allies and nowhere to turn. Tobin Dryden, Sophia's brother and guardian of her young son, had no choice but to flee for Ferelden. Tobin bought passage to Antiva on a merchant vessel and traveled under the name de Rocher. Once in Antiva, Tobin set about building a new, quiet life for himself and his nephew. He started a small business and eventually made a name for himself as a trader. The de Rocher merchant family prospered, and the name Dryden was almost forgotten. However, in 815 Blessed, Sylvie de Rocher uncovered old documents belonging to Tobin and pieced together the family's history. In her pride, and perhaps in her naivete, Sylvie reclaimed the name Dryden and returned to Ferelden. King Arland lies dead, and the Dryden name lives on. Our family has survived, even thrived, since the death of Sophia Dryden. The nobles of Ferelden may still spit on the Dryden name, but we Drydens know that Sophia Dryden was greater than them, almost a queen, and a hero of the people of Ferelden. From the personal files of Levi Dryden, merchant. And finally, the Chastened. The Chastened Wilders have lived in the Karkari wilds since the first wars with the Alamari drove them southward a millennium ago. According to their own lore, they had always been a forest-dwelling people that adapted quickly to their new home. Game and fish are plentiful in the wetlands, and the Chastened thrived. For a time, they and the hill-dwelling Avars were true threats to the northern lowlands. The Tevinter Imperium had arrived and was hard-pressed to keep back the waves of invasions from the south and the west. The fortress of Ostagar was built specifically to watch for Chasson hordes venturing north of the tree line. It was not until the legendary warrior Hafter soundly defeated the Chastened in the first half of the Divine Age that the question of their ability to contest the lowlands was settled permanently. Today, the Chastened are considered largely peaceful, though their ways are still primitive compared to our own. In the Korkari wilds, they live in strange-looking huts, built on stilts or even built into the great treetops. They paint their faces and are split into small tribes ruled by shamans like those amongst the Avars. There are many tales of these shamans having learned their magic from witches of the wilds, witches that inspire as much terror as they do awe and gratitude, even if there is no definitive proof they exist. In particular, the tale of Flemeth, the greatest witch of the wilds, is celebrated amongst all tribes. While there is no way to know how many there are in the wilds today, few travelers that pass through the forest tell of Chasons eking out an existence even in the frozen wastelands of the far south. One can assume that should the Chason ever organize themselves once more, we might have reason to fear them here in Ferelden. We ignore them at our peril. From Ferelden, Folklore and History, by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. Okay, next time we will pick up here in Redcliffe, try to track down these potentially undead things that are attacking the town, and hopefully get up to the castle and see what's going on with Arl Eamon. Until next time, I shall see you later.